Alright, let's talk about this belt. Coming in the next patch, just in case you missed it, we are getting access to a new item called the Durable Information Securing Container. This is a belt that's going to come from this new thing called Overcharged Delves. There's probably a good chance you missed out on this news because there was the 11.1.5 fiasco with like time-gated content, delayed content, buggy content. There's obviously like the Turbo Boost event, Dinars, Horrific Visions, all of these different power gains. So this one kind of flew under the radar a little bit. But in this video, I want to briefly talk about how you're going to obtain this belt, how it works, and of course, is it worth replacing or wearing? Let's dive in. So in the new patch 11.1.5, the Overcharged Delves are going to come into play. These are basically a further form of progression for delve enjoyers. And essentially it's going to unlock like a talent tree, and there's going to be similar to the bountiful delves. This is going beyond that, and these overcharged delves are going to have like additional enemies and affixes inside of them, but they're going to also offer you different ways to progress delves through this talent tree that's going to empower your character. This doesn't matter as much, but all players are going to be able to visit Dagran and Dornegal and pick up this quest that's going to give them access to the Titan Council, as well as eventually reward them with this belt, the Durable Information Securing Container. Now, this belt is kind of cool. It works similar to, I don't even know. I don't even know what to compare this to, but basically once you're wearing this item, you're going to be able to open it up and you're going to select powers basically. And you can switch around which one you want. There's no cooldown on it or anything. But let's quickly talk about what this belt looks like. What I mean by that is what stats are on it. So before recording this video, this belt used to not have stamina on it, which was a major downside. That means you were losing close to 1,000,000 health, if not more, depending on the class you were playing. So not having stamina was bad. It now has stamina alongside main stat, and it's going to be any type of armor type you're currently playing. So if you're on a mage, it's going to be cloth. If you're on a brewmaster or a monk, it's going to be leather, and you can insert whatever armor specialization you're playing. It's also going to come with a socket, meaning that you don't, if you're going to wear this belt, which I think most people will be, you don't need to socket your current belt that you're wearing, because when this comes out, you'll have a socket on it already. Lastly, you're going to have the random effect that's coming with this. Now, the base one that it starts with is this one called Charge Bolt. So this one's going to cause your abilities to basically give you a buff that will randomly target and damage an enemy every couple of seconds, doing nature damage. Now, this one's pretty basic. It's pretty much a single target ability. Each hit is actually pretty substantial, and it's going to end up doing a good portion of your damage. So this might be something that like a brewmaster would run in a raid setting, for example. But it's not just a damage proc. There are things like cauterizing bolts, which will have you turn you into a lightning rod that will randomly heal the lowest friendly target in your party or in your raid. You also have things like Charge Touch will cause your heals to basically heal an additional 1,000,000, which can be pretty substantial. You have a more AoE damaging effect that will shoot a charge bolt that will randomly like split and do damage to everything around it, which is, I guess, kind of nice compared to something like charge bolts, which is more single target. You also have Energy Shield, which will randomly proc a shield on you whenever you take damage, and the shield will last for, 10 seconds. It's 2.1 mil, so not a massive amount of HP for a tank, but it's in the ballpark of, 8% of our health pool. And if it happens to expire, it'll deal damage. Chances are, at least in High Mythic Plus, it won't really expire. It'll probably get consumed rather quickly. But if it happens to expire, it'll do damage. And then the last ones all give secondary stats. So for those who are worried about not having secondary stats on the belt, this is going to provide you those secondary stats. So you have a Mastery one, which will ramp up and then ramp down on a 24-second cycle. So every 48 to 50 seconds, you're going to see an influx and a deflux of that mastery. So if you're playing a class that is, it values mastery a lot, or values a mastery stack at some point to sync up with your cooldowns, is going to be pretty strong. You have one that will have a chance to increase your critical strike, and it's going to ramp up and then fall off immediately. You also have one that's just going to randomly proc haste. Now, this haste proc is actually kind of insane. I don't know if it's bugged right now, but from my testing, it can proc within its own window often. And so you're going to have almost like, I would say like 85% uptime on this buff from at least my testing. And it's, of course, a small sample size. I also don't know if it scales with haste. So I don't know if haste-based classes will value this more, because it'll give them more haste procs, I guess, if that makes sense. And then lastly, you have one that gives you a massive amount of verse that will decay over time as you use abilities. Now, there are a couple of bugs with this. So for the first bug I kind of want to talk about is this mastery one. Once we pull and get into combat, you're going to see that this buff right here is going to slowly ramp up over time. It's going to stack all the way up to 12. And then once it hits 12, it'll stop for a second, and then it'll start diminishing back down to 1. Now, what's unique about this is that the tooltip says one thing, but this does the other. So this only stacks up to about 3,600 mastery, despite the tooltip saying up to 7,200 mastery. So I don't know which is bugged. I don't know if the buff is bugged or if the tooltip is, because 300 every 2 seconds for 12 or for 24 seconds is 12 stacks. Obviously 300 times 12 is 3,600. So that doesn't really make sense. So something's bugged in here. Now we also have the versatility one, the static charge. Now this one is very bugged, or at least I'm assuming it is, because if it works the way that it is currently, it's going to be very broken. So right now I have 2,100 versatility. By itself, getting 7,000 verse is insane. But the way that Blizzard has coded this is that it actually gives you, because it's diminishing 5% every time you use an ability, they give you 20 stacks. And so it should give you versatility. It's like 7,000 divided by 20, right? Would be the stack. So if we open up a calculator, we do 7,000 divided by 20. Oh, not times 20. 7,000 divided by 20. It should give us a 350 per stack. So you'll give or take. Of course, this is a rough number because it actually gives us 7087. So give or take, we get 20 stacks of 350. And every time you use an ability, you're going to lose 350 versatility. But the way that this is currently working is it's giving us 7,000 versatility per stack. So if I can get this to proc, it's going to be very funny. So I just got it to proc and it's giving me 140,000 versatility. So I'm doing 126% more damage and 63% damage reduction. And so now every time I use an ability, it's going to diminish over time. But something like Exploding Keg is non-critting for a mill, which is kind of insane. So chances are it's a little bugged. If this actually is the way that it's supposed to work, chances are it's going to be what everyone runs. There's no doubt in my mind that that's a bug, and that's currently not as intended. I've already put in a bug report saying that it's giving 7,000 per stack versus 7,000 total. But anyways, let's talk about how this belt's going to operate in the realm of kind of Brewmaster specifically. So for those who don't know, we do use an item called the Adrenal Surge Clasp. This is an embellished item we've been using basically since the start of Season 1. And what this belt does is it gives us, you know, obviously main stat, stamina, secondary stats, but the embellishment effect gives us a massive boost of main stat, almost 3,500 agility. This effect is then doubled due to the writhing armor branding. So every, you know, I would say like it's about a 30 to 35% uptime on this effect. You're gaining a massive influx of 6,000 agility, which is very important for a Brewmaster. It gives us obviously increased just attack power and increase the magnitude of our spells. It also is going to improve the effectiveness of our stagger. And so these things are obviously very, very important. We're going to unfortunately be sacrificing this embellishment for this belt. Or at least that's kind of what's in question right now. And so is that worth doing? Just by itself, this belt is 7 item levels higher than the Adrenal Surge class currently, and it's giving us about 300 more agility and an extra 3,000 stamina. For us to actually want to wear this belt, while we are gaining a small bit of kind of base stamina and main stat, we are sacrificing secondary stats and the embellishment. And so the big question is it worth it? Unfortunately, I don't know the answer yet. It's kind of hard to tell. Of course, there's a lot of things you have to take into account. First off, does the Adrenal Surge class proc in times where you need it versus when you don't need it? That's kind of a big one. It also depends on the strength and proc chance of this belt. Some of the procs are about once per minute. Some are more, some are less. Having a massive influx of versatility, for example, can be really, really powerful. Having a big influx of crit can also be very strong. And notoriously in the past, borrowed power systems like this, whether it's the Onyx Amulet or the Circe Circlet, or even just additional effects like Kaplo's Molten Knuckles, these kind of cantrip effects generally scale pretty well with Brewmaster because we don't necessarily care about a lot of things like Mastery and Haste as much. and we mostly put all of our focus into crit and verse. Therefore, a lot of these effects tend to be more powerful for the Brewmaster specialization compared to other tanks or other classes. Because of that, it's kind of hard to tell if this is going to be good, especially without really being able to test Mythic Plus currently on the PTR. I could imagine that this belt is going to be much better in like single target raid encounters, for example. Choosing something like the charged bolts or the charged crystal could be pretty good. I would say if you're going to end up wearing this belt, the chances are you're probably going to run static charge or critical chain, which are kind of the two, it's either crit or verse procs. You can maybe make an argument for the fluctuating mastery, but it doesn't scale that well with the Brewmaster's current scaling on their mastery. So I don't know if you'd actually want to run that compared to just like having more mastery on your actual gear. But if you were to replace it, there's a couple of things that I would recommend probably crafting. So first off, you're probably going to get rid of your writhing band on your whatever piece you have it on. I currently have it on my chest, for example. If you did that, the embellishment you'd probably throw on here is probably Dusk Thread Lining. Having more versatility at a higher threshold, health threshold will mean that you're going to take less damage like on pull. This is going to be fine. This is about 800 versatility above 80% health. I've seen some people recommend Dawn Thread, but I just don't think Dawn Thread's all that great, only because critical strike increases the healing you're going to get from Celestial Fortune. And that's going to be important, but only when you're below 80% health and you actually need healing. Outside of that, you might end up crafting a weapon for your effect. And in that case, you could technically keep the rune branding. But if you end up making like a one-handed sword, for example, the embellishment you're probably going to want to use is going to be really any of the Dark Moon sigils. I don't think Blessed Weapon Grip is actually that terrible either. But Ascension isn't terrible. It does give a random secondary stat, so when this gives like Mastery or something, or Haste, it's pretty terrible. But when it does proc crit or verse, it can be pretty strong. Next, you have things like Symbiosis, which is actually not terrible for Brewmaster. Every 10 seconds, you will take a little bit of your max health in nature damage, but it's going to give you stacking versatility up to 5 times. And this is a Nerubian embellishment as well, so you can easily continue to run your branding, and it'll double the effectiveness of this, giving you ultimately a little bit more than 1,000 versatility, or 2,000 versatility whenever this does proc. Those are probably the embellishments I'll recommend if you happen to drop the Adrenal Surge clasp, but this is coming out in a couple of weeks, so stay tuned for that. And let me know if you have any questions. This belt is kind of interesting. These powers I forgot to mention, but they are unlocked by doing delves. So yeah, you're gonna have to do some delve gaming. Anyways, let me know if you have any questions down below. I hope you guys enjoyed, and I will catch you all in the next one. Peace.